You are so beautiful to me.
Frequencies get lower as I get higher. My frequency gets lower.
Hey, what's up guys? Back again with another video. This time I'm going to show you how to make a to-do list application using React.js. So I haven't made a series on React.js before as of the day of this recording, but I plan on it in the future, and so I've been experimenting with React.js recently with my personal projects and work projects. And yeah, it's a pretty cool framework that allows you to do a lot of cool, really cool stuff with components, really dynamic rendering and stuff like that. It's really powerful. So this was the first project that I finished using React.js, so I just want to show you how to make it yourself in case you want to know. Besides that, like I said, I'll have a series in the future, and so stay tuned for that. And also, if you want to learn more about React.js, their website has a lot of really good documentation, so you could read through that and learn it in really good detail because they do a great job of documenting how to use their framework. So check that out if you want to. But yeah, let me show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like, but let me show you how it works. So you have these three items by default. So let me reload here. You have these three items by default, and you can remove and add some new ones if you want to. So let's say something, you can just put whatever you want, right? So you can add whatever things you want to your to-do list, and then you can do them, and then after you do them, you just remove them, obviously. And we're styling this using Tailwind CSS. It's a really cool CSS framework that allows you to make really cool stuff really easily, rather than a framework like Bootstrap, which is kind of tough in my opinion compared to this. And yeah, so this is what I'm gonna use to make this application, or style it rather. And yeah, anyway, so let's get started here. Let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have npm and Node.js installed. So go ahead and install that if you don't have it. And also make sure you have what's it called, create React app. This will allow you to, this is a CLI tool, a command line interface tool that allows you to create React applications really easily, like templates. So make sure you install this. That's what I'm going to use at least. You can use whatever you want. But yeah, let's go ahead and make this now using the CLI thing. So let's find a place for our project. Let's go to tutorials, and I'm going to make it right here. So just open up a console right here, using whatever console you want. And then to create the project, you can do create React app. And then after that, you want to put the name of the project itself, so that'll be the name of the folder also. So let's say that we want to name this to-do list tutorial, to-do list dash tutorial, and yeah, that's all you need. So create dash react dash app space to-do list dash tutorial, so that'll be the name of the project, and then press enter, and then now it's going to generate everything for your React project. And that's going to take a minute or two because it has a lot of stuff to install, so just give it a second. And I'll be right back. Actually, while we wait for that, we can also just look into Tailwind CSS, because the first thing we need to do is we're going to actually build the styling for the application. So we're going to build like a demo, and then we're going to take that demo and then apply React to it. So that's how I'm going to do it at least. So if you want to learn more about Tailwind CSS, by the way, you can go to tailwindcss.com. They have some decent documentation. So click documentation here. They have a bunch of example documentations. And it's really powerful. I like the framework a lot. I'm going to be using it a lot more in my videos. And yeah, that's pretty much that. And then also they have a really good, well, I don't know if I would call it good, but they have an installation guide. There's a couple different ways to install it. But yeah, you can play around with that. And also they have a really cool tool. If I go to Playground, they have a really cool tool that you can use to build a demo using their little web editor type thing. So it's really nice because it's like live updating and stuff like that. So that's where we're going to use to build this real quick. It's the easiest way to do it. So let's check our thing here. Get rid of that. So yeah, it's still building, it looks like. Alright, so let's just get started building this, I guess, since we're waiting for the thing to install. It looks like it's almost done. Let's get started. So we're just going to make a simple div. Let me zoom in for you guys actually, so you can see this better, because my screen's very big, so it may be tricky sometimes to see what I'm doing. But yeah, so let's have a surrounding div. This will be the div for the application, the main application div for the component, and then after that we'll have an h2 tag. So this will just be the header, and inside of that we can say my to-do list. Okay, and then we can apply some styling to that with classes. So the Tailwind is really cool because you can just use classes, HTML class or CSS classes to style the components really easily, or the elements really easily. You don't have to actually go into a CSS file or anything like that, or copy templates. You can just literally really easily make something look or style something using these cool class things. So let me show you. So for example, if you want to make this purple, the background purple, we can do BG, and then you can do control space to make the suggestions pop up, by the way. But we can do BG purple, and then we have all these different shades of purple. And as you can see, it's automatically live updating it, which is really, really cool in my opinion. But we're going to do purple 600. That's a really nice color. And then since the background is now dark, we want to set the font to white, so text white. So there we go. And then text center. And max width is going to be 2XL. And a font, we're going to do a font of mono, so you can see that it changed right there. And let's make it bigger. So text 5XL, so 5 extra large. So that makes it much bigger. And let's give it some shadow, so shadow XL. You can see a little shadow applied there if you look closely. And what else do we want to do? We'll do a font of medium. Oh, we already have a font, don't we? Wait, that's the font weight. So yeah, the font weight of medium. And then so that'll just make it more bold. And then we're going to do M auto, so that'll center the div itself, not just the text. And then MT, so MT, so the margin on the top is going to be, we'll do 5, and then the margin on the bottom is going to be 5. And then the P with the padding is going to be 5. So as you can see, it expands the div, the space around the text is going to expand, so we have more space. So padding, and then the border is going to be gray. We'll do gray 400, and rounded large. So that's going to be a rounded border. As you can see now, it's rounded, so looks pretty cool. I guess we don't really need gray, do we? Yeah, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, so hopefully you like how that looks already. So as you can see, it's very, very simple to come up with quick, nice looking elements using these Tailwind classes here. And there's a bunch of different classes you can use. And it may seem a little overwhelming when you first use it, like how are you supposed to remember all these different classes, but the names are pretty self-explanatory, like M stands for margin, W for width, and then you just start to remember everything. So the more you practice, the more you'll start to remember all the different Tailwind tags. So yeah. Anyway, so besides that, what else do we want? So we're going to want a list of we need a list div, so that'll hold all our lists. So let me pull up the demo application. Oh, I closed it. So yeah, we need a list. So let's go ahead and try doing that. So we'll have a div for that. Div, and we'll have a closing div tag. There we go. And so inside of that, well, actually, let's give this a flex, and then justify center, which will put the elements in the center once we add them. Okay. And what else do we want? So we want a div. Actually, let's change this. Let's do grid justify item center. And then inside of that, for each of the items on the list, on your to-do list, we'll have another div for each of these. So inside of that div, actually let's have a closing div. So inside of that div, we'll have an h5, so h5, and let's just add one more div. So everything's modular. And inside of that, we'll have the actual thing that you want to do. So what you're planning to do on this to-do list. So we'll say like walk my dog. So as you can see, it's already centered right there. So walk my dog, and close that tag. And then after that, let's have a remove button like you saw in the demo. So a button that allows you to remove the thing once you're done doing it. So close tag for the button. And let's go ahead and style this. So h5 class, and we'll say font is going to be sans. Font semi-bold to make it more bold, and then the text we'll do large like that. Okay, and then for the button, we'll give a button a style to make it look nice. and we'll say the background is going to be red because it's a remove button, so I think red is fitting. And then the text will be white, and the font can be medium. And we'll do, let's have some padding so there's spaces around like the words. So padding on the x-axis of 2, so as you can see it spaces out now. And then we'll have a padding on the y-axis of 1, so it's spacing on the y-axis also. And then we'll have a rounded border of extra large, so that makes it rounded. And then finally we'll have a hover. So hover, whenever you hover over the button, we want it to change color. So we'll do a background of red of 900, so it gets darker. So watch this. Boom. So as easy as that, all you gotta do is add that, and now it has a cool hover functionality on it, which is pretty cool. And so let's put these two things on the same like line, because it would make sense if they're on the same line. So if we can do that with this outer div, that's why I put that there. So we can do that by doing flex justify between space x5. So as you can see, it added it with the justify between, right? Or no, it was the flex. Yeah, it was the flex. And so justify between, and then if we want to add some spacing in between these two things, we can do space on the x-axis of, we can do whatever we want. So we do 5. So 5, as you can see now, it's spaced out pretty good. So yeah, that's how that works. And so let's add some styling to the outer div. And so we'll do background of white, text center. We'll have a margin of 5, so it's a little more spaced out. Rounded of extra large, and a padding of 6, and a width of 2/6 of the page or the outer div. So it's gonna expand. Oh, as you expand the page, it like, you know, it's responsive was what I'm trying to say. It doesn't look too good whenever you make it small, but yeah, so it looks decent like that. So like I said, if it's smaller, it's not gonna look good, but we need space on the screen so we can see what we're doing. So we'll leave it like that for now, even though it's not supposed to look like that. Okay, I think that looks pretty decent, but also the reason we did, let me go down here. So down here we did background white, and the reason we did background white and a rounded border, you can't tell it right now, but we're gonna have a background of like a shade of blue or purple, something like that. So let's do like background purple, or let's do like indigo, like that. See, so we can have a light shade, and now that makes it a little more noticeable. So we'll do indigo 100, and now you can see that the rounded and the background of white makes more sense in that case, as you can see. Okay, and it's gonna look better as we zoom out. I'm zoomed in right now because my big screen. Anyway, so we can copy these, so I can show you an example of how multiple look together. So that's how it looks. Let me zoom out. Boom. So yeah, it looks like the demo I showed you before. You know, it's not perfect, except we should make it so that the remove stays on the right side. We gotta think about, oh yeah, that's why. So the justice is supposed to be justify, I think, right? Justify, there we go. So that's why I had justify between. That's supposed to space it out, so that looks way better. So let me add it to the other, fix it on these other ones here. So justify, and justify, there we go. So now it looks way better already. So let me zoom back in for you guys. There we go. And so yeah, now that we have the listings, and what else do we need? Also, okay, so we're gonna need the input box at the bottom so we can add new things to this page. So let's go ahead and add another div for that one down here. Oops. There we go. And add a closing div tag. Okie dokie, so we'll have, let's put a class on this outer one, and we'll do flex justify center, so it'll be centered basically. And then we'll have a form, since we're gonna have an input box and a submit button here to add new stuff. So a form, okay. And inside that form we'll have another div. And so that div will be, well actually we don't have anything for that yet, so let's leave it how it is. Inside of that we'll have our input box, our input thingy. Yeah, input box. Input. And what do we want for this? So we'll do a type of text. This will be a text input because you're adding new listings, right? And what else do we want? We'll have a width. So let's add a class here. So a width of 64, so that spreads it out a little more. And what else do we want? Let's do a padding on the left side of 2, a padding, overall padding of 2, and a border of 2. So that'll give us a nice little border, and then a border. We want the border to be purple, so border purple, and we can choose what shade we want. So we can do like 500. So border purple 500, and we want the border to be rounded also. So border rounded, and the width we already have 64, right? Yep, there we go. So it looks pretty good. And let's have a basic placeholder there. So like an example thing. So placeholder, walk my dog, something like that. So as you can see, it has a nice little input box and it says walk my dog, so it looks pretty cool, right? And yeah, let's add a button now, so a submit button, and type submit. Okay, and so that button's going to be we'll say add. So after you're done typing in what you want to add, you click the button and then it adds it for you using React. And so let's add some styling to this button here. So class, let's think. So we'll have a background of pink. I think that's a nice color. So pink 500 looks good. And we want the border to be rounded. So we'll do rounded medium, and a text of white since we have the pink background. And then a padding on the x-axis of 5. And then the text will be big, so extra large. Looks better like that. And then a padding on the y-axis of 1. So it looks pretty good. Okay. And let's add some hover functionality. So like these, they turn darker. So let's add it for this too. So whenever you hover over it, so we'll do hover, and then we'll do a background. Let's try a darker pink. So right now we have 500. Let's try 800. Looks good. So whenever you hover over it, you get a darker pink. And yeah, looks pretty good for that. I think there should be more spacing on the bottom, but we'll worry about that later. And what else do we need? Let's add some spacing in between the input box and the button. So right here on this outer tag, we can do space x5. There we go. So now we have some space in between that. Looks good. And the reason I added this, by the way, is if I remove it, it centers it on the left. So we want it to be centered in the center, obviously. And so that's why I have that there. So flex and then justify center. So looks pretty good. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this style, I think. So now what's left is basically just to add this to the React application and then actually add the functionality for adding and removing stuff. So yeah, so as you can see, it's very, very easy to come up with a quick demo using Tailwind CSS. Just quickly come up with a design, and then you can start working with your backend and all that stuff really easily or quickly after coming up with it. So hopefully you like this. Hopefully you start to use Tailwind CSS. I'm not sponsored by them, but I should be, I guess, at this point because I like it so much. Anyway, so we can set this to the side for now. We don't need this anymore, but we can set this to the side for now. And let's open up our React application here that we just created. So it's done loading. So we'll do cd, so go into the folder that was created, and then we'll do npm start, which will start the project. But we don't want to do that yet. First, we want to install some packages. Actually, before we do that, let's actually go into the project and check it out to see what we have. So development tutorials, to-do list tutorial. So I'm just going to open this using VS Code and we can check it out. Okay, there we go. And let's see what we got by default. So we got a couple of files generated here, and a lot of it's pretty much junk, but it's a nice little template to work with. So we can start deleting some stuff. So delete that. We don't need that. We can get rid of all this. We don't need this. We can get rid of all this. We don't need this. And we can get rid of all this too. And we can leave that one. Okay, cool. So let's check out our index.html. I don't think we need to change this, do we? Pretty sure we can leave this how it is. Oh yeah, we need to get rid of that because we deleted the file for that one. Okay, I think that's all we need for that. We can leave that. And so the first thing we want to do is actually install Tailwind CSS. That's actually going to be one of the hardest parts. It's not too easy to install it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So what you want to do first is just come up or like make the folder where you want it to be installed. So we're just going to make a styles folder. So styles. And inside that styles folder, we're going to have a Tailwind CSS file, so tailwind.css, and that's where the Tailwind CSS is going to be generated. And then we're going to have, let's move our index.css into here, boom. And besides that, let's go ahead and check out the Tailwind CSS documentation so we can see what we need to install. So Tailwind CSS, documentation, installation, and then go down here and you can see that it tells you what to install using npm. So let's try doing that. So we'll do npm install Tailwind CSS, post CSS, and auto prefixer. Then we're going to do -- save. Oops, yep, there we go. So -- save. And now it's going to install. It's going to take about a minute or so, just because it's a pretty big amount of stuff, I guess. So give that a second. And just, I guess, while it's doing that, we can also do this. So you're going to need a file called postcss.config.json. So go ahead and create that in your thing. So postcss.config.json. Is that what it was? No, JS, sorry. JavaScript file. So yeah, postcss.config.js, and then copy or paste the thing that you copied from their website. And that's pretty much all you need, I guess, for that. You can leave it how it is for now. And let's check on our installation. So that's done installing, but you need one more thing they don't tell you about. Also install post-css-cli, I think that's what it is, right? Yeah, post-css-cli-save, and that'll install that. So give that a second. So while that's doing that, we can also go ahead and find what we need. So let's just open this up real quick. Here we go. So this is the one we need. So npx tailwind css init -- full. So that's going to generate the full Tailwind CSS configuration file, basically. So let's paste that. Boom. So there we go. It has generated a tailwind.config.js file for you. And so what do we need to do now? I think that's, oh yeah, so also we need to grab this. So take this and then go into your Tailwind CSS tailwind.css file and then paste it here. And then after that, you can go back into your Tailwind config and you can see that this is what was generated using the CLI a second ago. So pretty cool. So Tailwind, post css.config.js. Let's just make some quick changes to this real quick, actually. I can just copy and paste it from my other project. I'll leave all this code in the description below, don't worry. So in case you're worried about, missing what you need, I'll leave all of this in the description below so you can check it out and use it for yourself. So what else? Tailwind.js. We're not using Tailwind.js, we're using Tailwind.config.js, right? Yep, Tailwind.config.js. And that's all we need, it looks like. So let's go back into our package.json, and we need to change these build scripts here. So I can copy this from my other project. 1 second. There we go. So now it's replacing it. And so what this will do, basically, this is the important part right here. So what's going to happen here is it's going to, Tailwind is going to use post-CSS, and it's going to generate the Tailwind CSS file using these directives that you placed inside of here, and then put it inside of the index.css file. So just make sure that the names are correct and the path is correct. So source styles tailwind.css, and then the output is going to be source styles main.css. Mine is called index.css, so we'll just change that. So index.css, and that's pretty much all we need, I'm pretty sure. So let's try running this by doing npm start, and now it's going to try starting the React application and also run the scripts right there. Oh, it says something is already running on port 3000. I guess that's because my other React application is still running, so I need to force close that, I guess. Okay, cool. So I was able to close the other application that was running on port 3000. So now my React application is loading up here, and it says module not found, can't resolve index.css. So since we moved some files around, we just need to fix the paths here. So we can close all this, and we can go into, oh yeah, if you look into your index.css, you can see the Tailwind CSS file, the very giant Tailwind CSS file was generated. So that's good. So that worked very how it should. So we'll go into app.js, and all you need to do basically is first we need to delete that. We don't need that. And we can also get rid of all this sample code here, and we can change, we don't need, yeah, we can leave that. We don't even need it really though. What else do we need to do? So in our index.js right here, we need to change the location. So instead of index.css, it's styles.index.css. So just change the file path, of course. That's what you need to do. And what else do we need? I'm pretty sure that's it. So let's see if it works now. If we reload the page. Alright, it looks like it's working. It's blank because we deleted everything, so it looks like it's working. Good. So now we can copy over the code that we built using Tailwind, the playground thing, and try putting it in our application, okay? So we go here to app.js, which is our application roots component, and paste it. So there we go. So here's our playground stuff. So we can just select this and right click and do format selection, so it makes it look better. And this is a little annoying, but since you're using JSX and React.js and all that, we have to change class to class name. So we can actually do that by selecting this and do change all occurrences, so class name, just like that. And make sure you fix this one here, okay? So yeah, that should be good now. Everything is renamed successfully. So let's pull up the application now, and here we go. Look, already it's live updated, so you can see that it was able to load your application using Tailwind CSS, or apply the styling using Tailwind CSS with the code that you provided. So really cool. So let's do this. So we'll have a split screen view of what we're doing here. Okay, it's kind of tricky, but let's try this out. All right, there we go. So it looks a little weird, but so first thing we need to do is actually fix the background. So instead of doing background indigo right here, let's just apply that to the body. So let's go to our index.html file and go to the body, and we'll set the body to class of background indigo 100. And we're not using class name, we're using class because it's a regular HTML file, so we can use class background indigo 100. Now as you can see, it's applying to the entire page, the entire body, so that's good. Looks way better. Great, so now that's applied and everything looks good. And what else do we need to do? So yeah, that's it for that styling part. So now we need to actually make it so that whenever you add stuff, a new thing pops up right there, okay? So to do that, we are going to, let's delete these divs here, the extra ones. Okay. And we'll leave that we'll leave that one for now. And so let's split this up into components. It's a React application, so we actually need to, or we should use components because that's what they're intended for. But first, let's change this app functional component into a class-based component. So to do that, we need to import React. So import React from React. There we go. And so now we can change this. So we'll do class class app extends component React.component. So there we go. Now that's a class-based component, and we can cut this and override the render method or function. Render, boom, and paste it. So return, and there we go. So now we're returning the app component or the JSX, and so inside of that, we'll have a, well, first we're going to need a state for our application. So state is how we're going to manage the data of our application. And we can leave it how it is for now, but also we need a constructor. So a constructor that accepts a props, and then we'll do super props. So this will allow us to use props within our component. And what else do we need? It looks good so far. So I think the first thing we should do is make it so that it's able to take the listings from our state here and actually render them to the screen. So let's have some like default listings. So we'll have items and items, and then items will be an array of strings. So we'll say walk my seagull. I think I spelled seagull correctly, I hope. Legalize murder. And then listen to Dean Martin, because Dean Martin's a really good singer, so listen to Dean Martin on Spotify. And yeah, looks good. So what we want to do is basically take the take these values from the state and apply them or render them into the listing. So for each div, or for each item in the state, we'll make a div for that, which will correspond to one of these listings here, okay? So to do that, we're going to need, we're going to have a thing here that maps it. Before that, actually, let's go ahead and make a component out of these listings here. So like I said before, we want to split this up into components, so that's it'll help us structure our application better. So down here, we'll have a functional component, and we'll call it item. So it's an item on the list, I guess. And so we'll return a JSX, which is going to be one of these divs here. So cut that, place it here, boom, and then we can fix the formatting. There we go. So now we have a item component, and let's have another component called listing. So this will be the component that holds multiple items. So listing, or list rather, I guess, that's fine. So list, and we're going to return this outer div here. So that's going to represent the list. There we go. Alright, cool. And let's have both of these components have a props, so they'll accept props. So you can transfer data. And what now? So like I said before, we're going to take each of these strings here and then apply them by turning them into an item. And then for each item, we want to put that into the list and render it to the screen, basically. Okay. So to do that, we're gonna have to have a list here. So we'll have a list right here, and then what are we gonna put in this list? Well, first we're gonna need to pass these items here from the state inside as a prop into this list. So items is gonna be equal to this dot state dot items. So now the items are being passed in. And that should be good. So now they're being passed into the list component, and then the list component is going to take them and then render them as items. So for each listing, or for each item, we want to make an item component. So to do that, we can use the JavaScript mapping thing. So like this. So props.items, and we're grabbing that from the prop that was passed in, so the array of items. So now we're going to map the array of items by doing props.items.map. And so for each string in that array, we're going to have an item and an index, and I'll show you why I need the index in a second. So for the item and the index, we want to return a new item. So based on each string, we want to create a new item dynamically, basically. And so what do we want to pass into that? So we'll pass in some information like the name of the to-do, like the actual string itself. So we'll do item, and so that's going to represent, so the item here is going to represent the actual string, because of course we're passing that in. And so now back down in here in item, we want to take that as a prop and then render it. So replace this right here. So instead of that, we want to do props dot item. There we go. So we're going to take that prop that was passed in, which is the string name of what we're doing, and then render it to the screen, basically. And there we go. Already you can see that it's rendering all three, except that it's not putting the prop in there like it should. So we got to think about why that is. Oh, I see. It's because we called it name, not item. So the thing that we're passing in is called item, but the actual prop itself is called name. So we'll just change this to name. So props.name, and then now this will render each string. So already, as you can see, that's so easy. It's really cool. So basically, based on what the state is, it's going to get what's inside the state and then dynamically render each listing based upon those strings that are inside the state for items by passing them in. Let me recap what's happening here. So we have a state here by default, and then when you first render the application, it's going to make a list component, and then it's going to pass into that list component as a prop, an items prop, and then the value of that items prop is actually going to be the array of strings that is inside of this state. And then inside of the list component, you're going to take each item in that array of items and then make a item component out of that, and then pass in as a prop the name. A name is going to be called name, which is the name of the prop is going to be called name, right? And then you're going to be passing in the item, which represents a string of this array here. Okay, so this map thing is basically going to take the array and then convert it one by one into an item string, and then you're going to take that string and pass it into the item component as a name prop, and you're going to take that name prop within the item component and then render it to the screen by doing props.name basically, okay? Like I said, this is not a tutorial on React.js, so if you've never touched React before, then this is probably very confusing, but if you have, then this should make sense. It's pretty basic stuff. Okie dokie, so let's continue here so that we can, let's make it so that whenever you type something in here and then click add, it actually adds it to the list. So to do that, we're going to need a few things. Well, first of all, we're going to need like an event to handle whenever you click on the button here and actually submit the form. So to do that, you can add a on submit thing here. So on submit, and what we need to do is map that to a function so that whenever we submit, a function is run which does something. So let's create a function here within our and let's call this function something like add item, or we don't need to put function, we can just do add item. So add item is going to accept an event, which is going to be the event of the form submission. And whenever this function is triggered, we want to do this dot set state, and we want to add whatever is added to the input. So in this case, we can do set state and then have the state as, we'll have a function here, so state arrow operator, open that up. And then rather instead of that, actually we want to change the state. So the current state is the items that we have provided in this items array. So basically, let's just take the items that are currently there and then add on to that by concatenating. So in this case, we can simply do items and then do states.items, which is going to get the current items, and then we want to concatenate, which is going to add on a new item to that. So we can concatenate, and then now we need to grab the input that was submitted in the event. So how can we do that? Well, we can do that by, well, first of all, one way we could do it is have we can store the input within our state right here. So we can have an input value, and whenever we want to grab the input that was provided in the input, we can just do state.items to concat, and then we can do this.state.input. So that's how we grab the input, and then we can use that input and grab it and then concatenate it to the current list of items, or the array of items. Okay, and let's see, we have an issue here because so we need to, so that looks like that's all we need pretty much, except we also need well, actually we'll leave it for now. Okay, so let's go down here, and then on submit, we just got to provide the function that we want to use. So in this case, we could do this dot add item. So that will basically provide a reference to the function that we just created. So now whenever you submit the form by clicking the button here, it will pass in this add item function as a parameter, and then it'll just call it automatically. Yeah, so what else do we need to do? So let's try testing it out. So we'll type something in here, click add, and nothing really happens. So in this case, that's because we're not setting the input here. So we actually need to map the input box to the input variable within the state. So we can go down to here, and we'll do on change. So whenever the input box changes, we can have a function here that sets it. So in this case, we'll have on change, or how about handle input, which accepts an event because it's an event just like this one is. So we have two events now. So handle event, or handle input rather, and then we can do this dot state, or set state, and then we'll have a new we'll edit the state that we currently have. So in this case, we can just do this, and we can say input is equal to the event target dot value. So we're grabbing the new value that was provided in the input, and we're replacing the current value in the state with the new value, basically. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. What's the problem here? Says comma is expected. Oh yeah, so there we go, boom. So now that's going to handle the input whenever we do it, hopefully. Let's see, what else do we need to do? Oh yeah, so we need to actually put it. So on change, we'll do this dot handle input, just like that. So now that should be mapped to it. So if we type something in there, we get an error. It says cannot read property set state of undefined. Well, that is because what we need to do is actually bind our functions in the constructor here, I believe. So let's try that out. So in this case, we can do this dot add item is equal to this dot add item dot bind this. So that's going to bind it to the class or whatever. And then this dot handle input. So basically any member function that you create for this class here, you need to bind it basically. Handle input dot bind this. There we go. So that should help with that. Let's see what happens now. Cool, so now it's adding, but look what happens. As soon as you add it, it disappears instantly. So that's a little problematic. And the reason you do that, and the reason that happens is because you actually need to have something down here. You need to do event.prevent defaults. I don't know really exactly what that does, but that is that's what you need whenever you're handling this type of events. You need to do prevent defaults. Okay, so let's try this out now. So let's reload. There we go. So now it's able to add it. And now you can see that the input is still there, so it doesn't remove it, which is cool. So you can add whatever you want now. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so let me just recap what's happening here real quick. So we have these two new functions here, which are going to help us handle the events. So this first function here, we have the handle input function. This is whenever the input box, whenever you type something or change something within that input box, that event is going to be passed to this handle input function. And within that, you can do whatever you want. You can handle the event however you want. But what we're doing is we're getting the state, or setting the state using the setState function, and we're grabbing the input box, the input value within the state, and replacing it with the input that was provided to the input element by doing event.target.value, which grabs the value inside of that element currently. So we're just resetting the state, or actually we're changing the state by setting it to the new value, which is whatever is inside of the input box currently. And then we have the second function here, which handles the onChange or onSubmit for this form here. So whenever you click the add button, this form is going to submit, and that event is going to be passed to the add item function, and that function will get use the setState function also, except this time it's going to set the state of the items by replacing the current items with the current items plus what you just grabbed from the input box. So all you're doing is adding on to what you currently have by using the concatenate function. And yeah, and then of course you have the event.prevent defaults method here, or function here being called, which stops it from deleting itself basically. Yeah, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Now we have one more thing to do. We need to make it so that whenever you click remove, it actually removes the listing. So currently when we click it, nothing happens. So we want to make it actually do something. So let's go down here to the item here, which is where that button exists. And so we want to do it. So button on click. So whenever you click on the button, a function is called, which will handle that event. So on click. But we don't have a function yet to handle it, so we need to create one. And yeah, so let's create a function up here with the other functions, and we'll call this one remove item. So we have add item, so let's actually just add it right under that. So instead of add item, we're gonna have remove item, and you can pass in the event. I don't think yet. Well, yeah, let's pass in the event. So now inside of this function, we just want to remove the item from the list that we have here, or the array that we have here inside the state. So there's a couple ways you can do that. We're not going to make this too advanced, so we're just going to do the simple thing, which is just remove the last one on the array, just for starters. So we'll do let new list equal this.state.item. So we're getting the current items array. That's pretty simple, right? And then what we're going to do is do new list.pop, which is going to remove the last element on that array. And then after that, we just want to replace the current state with that new edited array state, or array, or variable, whatever, array. So this dot set state, boom, boom. And then inside of that, we can do items is equal to new list. So we're just replacing what we have already with the new edited array. Okay, so that's going to do that. So that's all you need for that pretty much. So now what we need to do is actually pass this down. So currently this function here lives inside of the app component. But if we scroll down here, the on-click thing, the button here in the on-click event handler, or the event thingy-majiggy, is inside of the item component, right? So how do we get that function inside of the item component? We have to pass it down, okay? So to do that, we can use props. So if we go down to the list component here, we can add a prop for this. So we'll say remove item thing, I guess. That's fine, whatever you want to call it. And we just want to do this dot remove item. So not remove item parentheses, because that'll actually call it. We just want remove item, which is like a reference to the function basically. So remove item is equal to this dot remove item. So that's going to be the prop. And so list. So let's go to list now. And now we can go to item within list and do remove item is equal to, and then this dot props, or just props dot remove item. So basically we're just grabbing it, transferring it to list, and then we're grabbing it with inside list using the props argument, and then we're grabbing that prop, which is actually a reference to the function, and then again passing it into the item component. And then inside the item component we can do props dot remove item, just like that. So that's how we transfer it from one component to another component, or rather from one component to another component to another component. So we're just passing it through the props. Okay, so then inside the item we're grabbing it from the props, and then now whenever you click the button, the on click is going to be triggered, which the event is going to be passed to the remove item function, and it's going to be processed there. Okay, so one more thing we need to not forget to do is actually to bind the function. So this dot remove item is equal to this dot remove item dot bind this, so that will bind the function. Okay, so I think that's all we need, right? Let's try reloading. Expected an assignment or function call instead solid expression. Oh, I see the problem. It's just like a little, we messed up a little bit with the thing here. So let's change it a little bit. Boom. Boom. Okay, that should be good now. Okay, so look, it's already working. So if we click remove on listen to Dean Martin, it removes it automatically for you. So it's just changing the state, and then it's updating the page automatically after the state is changed, which is really cool. And we can add more if we want to. Boom, remove, add, remove, remove. So in this case, it's not perfect, because if you click the first one, it's only going to remove the last one, because all we're doing is just really popping the last element. That's what pop does. So in this case, if you do want to remove the one that you actually click on, you have to basically keep track of which one you're working with and pass it in as a parameter, and then remove that specific one from the array. So yeah, you can do that if you want to. I'm not going to do that. Actually, if we check the console real quick, I'm going to show you something. So it says, warning, each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So that's whenever you use a list in React, you usually it wants you to have a key for each of the items in the list. So what I mean by list is every time you have multiple components, in this case we're mapping the items array and then making a component for each of these, so it's like a list. So for each item generated by that mapping, we want to have a key, or it wants us to have a key for each of these. So that's why we have the index variable here. We don't actually have to have it there, but if we're going to have a key, we want to have it there. So we can do key is equal to, in this case, index. There we go. So now they all have a key. So if we inspect the element again, the error is not there anymore because we do have a key now. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. We have finished our to-do list application. We can add items now. So Cody is cool. We can remove it if we want to. We got a really cool styling thing here, so everything looks really good. And yeah, so hopefully you like this little to-do list React application. It was a pretty simple application, but this is my first React application. I've made more since then, but I just wanted to show you, how you can start off with something simple, and that's how you basically learn, right? You start off with something simple, make it, Google along the way, and you'll find out how to make some cool stuff, and you can use that in the future, basically. It's all about experience and just practicing. Anyway, so hopefully you found this informative and useful, and hopefully you liked it. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can check out the code for this episode in case you want to check out the code or save it for future use or anything like that. It's up to you. And also I'll leave a link for our Discord community if you want to join our community, and you can get some new friends. If you don't have any friends, you can talk about programming. You can get help with your programming stuff if you want to. It's just a really cool programming community if you want to join, so join that. There's a link in the description. And also, the final thing is that if you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below this video, and you can join this channel as a member for as low as 99 cents, $5, or $10 a month, and you can cancel anytime. And it comes with some really cool perks like early access to all of my new videos, just like this one here. And you can also get a cool rank on my Discord server, so you can show everyone how cool you are and swaggy you are. And finally, you can see yourself on the screen like you see right now. So thank you to all of you who are currently members. Thank you very much, and thank you to anyone who is not a member. Thanks for watching my videos anyway and subscribing and all that. I appreciate your support, and I'll continue to make videos for you guys. So yeah, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you want to see more, subscribe, and peace.
Fuck you, you got my all, I want you to. Fuck you, you got my all, I don't wanna have it. The clothes don't help.